Welcome back, friends, and into another edition of In the Trenches, live here from the Chrysler Center. And I want to let you know what's going on at MGoBlue Podcast. Right now, already out, the radio replay of Inside Michigan Football, which happened Monday night. My guests were Sharon Moore, Lamar Morgan, the defensive backs coach, as well as not an extra player guest. We actually had audio from Donovan McCauley, and it was captured by Jason Avant. We talked about the special performance that he had. We'll get a chance, Brian and I, once we get to 7 from 77, to talk more about the performance by the wide receivers. Also already out, Defend the Block. It's the basketball podcast hosted by my partner, Mr. Brian Bush. And these are including the fun questions that all come up on Media Day. And it's always a question of, what do I ask these guys? So it's not the standard, coach speak from the coaches, players speak from the players.
I got a few for you once you do the intro, by the way.
Yes, so. And so, yeah, there's a couple there. And still to come. Thursday morning, Conquering Heroes, and it's the new field hockey coach, Christy Gannon-Fisher, in her first year. A lot of you probably remember her as a player here, as an athlete here at the University of Michigan. Thursday afternoon is going to be the In the Trenches preview for USC. I'm going to give you my offense, defense, and special teams keys to the game, as well as a little bit of a locker room speech. This one, I'll just say it. I've got some big plans for you, Brian.
Okay.
And then Sunday morning, we will have the recap since the game won't get over on the West Coast until about 11 o'clock Eastern time. It's usually hour and a half, 2 hours after the game, right before we get back on the plane to come back to the East Coast. Brian will have that out for you as well, but it'll be ready for you when you wake up, and hopefully we're celebrating a win over USC.
Exactly. John, do you believe in aliens?
No.
Okay. What's your biggest fear?
My biggest fear? I don't really have a whole lot of fears. I like to take them on. I don't know, maybe I always have this fear of missing the plane, missing the broadcast. You wake up in that cold sweat. It used to be, I have this fear of missing the kickoff and wake up and I can't find my helmet. So I guess maybe that's
what would solve that? A night game. Would you rather be able to speak every language in the world or be able to speak to animals?
Well, I've talked to enough people that there's really not that many interesting people to talk to, so I'll take animals.
I might regret asking this. Do you have any hidden talents?
Hidden talents. None that I can divulge right now.
Okay, perfect. As I said, I was going to regret it. But yeah, these are the random ones. I had a big old collection for every player on the men's basketball team. And the one that I asked to every guy was if the 4 fingers on your left hand could dispense 4 different liquids that you would have on demand available to you at all times.
Okay.
What would you select as those 4 liquids for you to have at all times?
The 4 liquids would be water.
Yep.
You have to be number 1.
Yep.
I would say oil because you got to keep the motor running. Mm-hmm. Diesel fuel just because I want a badass, big-ass truck.
Yep.
And then that extra one, I guess since I've already got water covered, I guess I would have to say beer.
There we go. Perfect. I mean, the man knows what he wants.
Yeah.
I love it. That's great.
What were some of the, I don't want to give away the podcast, but what were some of the liquids that some of the basketball guys said?
My original 4 did not have gas, and several guys said that, and I was like, that's actually a really good idea. One asked if they could, I forget who it was, asked if it could be liquid gold to sell. I said, I don't know if that's quite what we're looking for, but I do appreciate the effort.
Age of NIL.
Yeah. But the one that I was surprised that several guys said, Shirley Temples are back. That's a thing now.
Shirley Temples, said by every guy who's telling their mom and dad, yeah, I just went to the bar and had Shirley Temples. Right. Yeah. Maybe a Roy Rogers on the side. On the rocks.
Extra cherry, please. Okay. But yeah, I was surprised about that one. It was mostly, Gatorades or protein shake, whatever.
Yeah.
But there were some fun answers, some great answers overall. And I did declare a best in show, the best performer of answers, because I talked to every guy. So it'll be fun. But Good job. You
And
didn't.
Who was the best in show?
You'll have to listen to that one. But I shared it with the person I talked to last, who had a very good performance as well. But check it out. It's fun. Always enjoy that around Media Day because, all the other reporters get some good fun. They get to ask the basketball questions. I've asked them all summer. Let's mix it up a little bit. All right, let's talk some football here on In the Trenches. And it's our 7 from 77. We will mostly discuss what happens coming up this week, Michigan's trip to USC. I did want to put the finishing touches on Michigan's win over Wisconsin on Saturday. Two big stories to me, obviously the wide receiver breakouts for both Donovan McCulley and Andrew Marsh. Also, the fact that Rod Moore felt like he really, truly announced his return. Thoughts on those two aspects and anything else that stood out to you upon film review after Wisconsin?
When you're talking about the wide receivers, just the fact that we have guys that now have the confidence, the ball will actually be thrown to them. They're running routes. They're running them aggressively and precise routes. I think Samaj is probably one of the guys that, because he runs more of the shorter routes, we see Donovan McCulley, Andrew Marsh, they're more of the deep routes. But watching these guys run the routes, they're running them with precision, with the confidence that, hey, if I am open, the quarterback's actually going to get me the ball. And so that's a lot of fun. And it's in conjunction with the run game. When you show that you have a couple of weapons downfield, one, a quarterback that can throw the ball downfield and complete passes, and a guy that's going to take care of the football. Only one interception to this point for Bryce Underwood, but it's also a guy that, when you look at McCulley, Marsh, I'll throw Goodwin in there as well. To all these guys, Morgan, you have that threat of we can throw the ball downfield. We don't just have to run the ball. When you look at this game against Wisconsin, when the pass game really started to find a good rhythm, that's when Wisconsin had to honor it, take an extra guy out, or at least put him off the ball a little bit more. And now you got Justice Haynes, Jordan Marshall, all of a sudden not picking up easy yards, but more productive yards.
Number 2 on our 7 from 77, we've talked a lot about adjustments. Michigan making adjustments on the travel from Norman to Lincoln, bouncing back from that loss week 2 to take care of business in the Big Ten opener. Now some adjustments for Michigan traveling out west for the second time in conference. Last year, Michigan left on a Friday and went up to Seattle and lost to the Washington Huskies. Sherrone Moore's already talked about the fact that the team will leave a day early. They head out west on Thursday in advance of the clash in the Coliseum. Thoughts on that decision and other aspects that are important when you consider the travel for a conference game about 2,500 miles away?
Well, they'll basically have 2 full days because this game isn't going to start until, 4:30 local time, but 7:30 our time, our body clock time. And you're going to have 2 days to be out there, Friday and then all day Saturday. So you'll get a little bit more acclimated to the surroundings. You'll get a little more acclimated to the time. And you put that 5-hour plane ride or 4.5, whatever it is, to get out there a little bit further in the rearview mirror. And it's really going to be imperative, these guys, and I know Sherrone also talked about, hey, we're going to go out to and have practice at the Chargers facility. So it's a matter on Friday. You're not just sitting around. Coaches are going to have meetings. There's going to be some free time for any family that's out there or alumni or anything that's going on. But then it's, hey, when are we focused in? When do you have time to relax? All of those things so that you're not just sitting around all day. And it's going to be the same thing on Saturday. And I know it'll feel like the game isn't quite as late because of, hey, if you're not waking up until 8 o'clock local time, it's going to be 4:30 local time. So it's not as far away, but you're going to, it's get up, be a little bit active, get yourself some food, and then, lock into the game. So I do think that in terms of just the travel, there'll be a chance. And then when you think about the game itself, and without digging too deep, and I know we're going to start talking a little bit about USC, but you start thinking about what could be different this year in a trip out there, and you just logically look and say, well, is the quarterback play better than it was out there? And I think last year there was, 3 quarterbacks that ended up playing, at least 2 of them in that Washington game. Yeah, the quarterback play is better. Running backs, even though, love the guys that we had last year, running backs are at a higher level, receivers at a higher level. I think the offensive line is a bit of a push. It's very similar to last year. Defensively, I'm not going to go through every position, but even though you don't have the big-time names up front, I think that this defense is playing at a higher level as a group than they were when they went out to Washington last year. It really wasn't until that Northwestern game at home where the defense felt like it was starting to hit on all cylinders. So I think just in terms of the logistics getting out there, we'll see how it goes. I did it a couple of different ways when I was in the NFL. We did that a couple of days early. I don't necessarily know how much of a difference that makes, but if you come away with a win, it's hard to say, all of the differences that you put into preparing for this game didn't pay off.
It would have been surprising if they did things exactly the same way after a loss when it was the second time doing this. And obviously Michigan's had some significant travel. Flying to Norman or Lincoln isn't exactly a short trip by any means. So this team is certainly well traveled. The miles are high. We'll continue our 7 from 77 here momentarily, but did you know that your favorite craft brewery is also a proud sponsor of Michigan Athletics?
That's right, Brian. Founders Brewing Company has been brewing up high-quality, highly rated beers like All Day IPA, Michigan Pilsner, and their new Mortal Bloom right here in Michigan for over 25 years. And maybe I should have said, instead of just beer for my fourth liquid, I should have said Founders and picked one of them. I would take the Michigan Pilsner. That would be my fourth liquid. As a proud sponsor of Michigan Athletics, they're here to help you celebrate every Wolverine win with the perfect beer in hand. Whether you're at the game, you're tailgating, or simply watching the game from home, there's nothing like enjoying a Michigan-made beer from Founders. Learn more about their community involvement and where to find your go-to game day beer at foundersbrewing.com.
There are plenty of great spirit sponsors with Michigan Athletics, but only a few are on the podcast. So, we got to lean toward Founders.
Maybe I should have said Woods and Whiskey. I don't know.
I mean, I'm just saying.
That's my guy.
I know. By the way, how about Brian Greasy coming up to the booth on Saturday? He was one of the honorary captains.
Touchdown, interception.
See you later. Yeah. It was great. It was fantastic.
And since then, he has taken full credit as well. That's
if the roles were reversed, wouldn't you?
No, it's about the team.
All right. Well, I don't know. Maybe John will lie to you about this next answer. It's number 3 on our 7 from 77. Maybe he's found his truth serum. But let's talk about a potential discussion for the offensive line. I'm letting you at least talk all line here, John.
How long do I have?
Well, Jack's coming by at about 11:50 this morning here on the live stream, so we can make him wait. He's closing business and doing all that he does. Both Giovanni Ohadi and Brady Norton were questionable for the game against Wisconsin. If both are able to go on Saturday, how would you adjust the offensive line? We don't know yet. It's only Tuesday. But if it's full strength offensive line-wise, what would you set up as the 5?
Well, I would obviously have Evan Link at left tackle, Giovanni at left guard, Kripp at center, and then that right guard position. There's probably going to be a rotation, but I would start with Jake Guarnera. I think he's done a tremendous job in there. And he's comfortable. Things seem to be rolling along. I don't know that I want to upset anything on that side, and obviously Andrew Sprague. But in regards to that right guard spot, I probably start Jake, but at some point, I think I get a Phobie in there, and maybe even Brady Norton. It gets a little bit weird if you're putting 3 guys in there at one position on the offensive line, but at least a Phobie, because if and this is a big if. I don't know the status of Giovanni Ohadi. If he's at a position physically where, hey, maybe he starts the game, but somebody falls on him or he's starting to get sore and he can't go, at least a Phobie has been in the game because he's the guy that you're going to put over there at left guard. So maybe I keep him a little bit more juiced up, a little bit more, in the moment, and rotate him at right, and then all of a sudden, hey, if you got to throw him over there, at least it's not his first snap when he goes in there at left tackle or left guard.
Let me ask you this. Has the play between comparing Jake Guarnera and Nathan Afobe been comparable to where if El Hadi was sliding back into right guard, you'd keep Nathan Afobe at left because he's played there? Or do you think Guarnera has been a step ahead at right guard compared to Afobe at left?
I mean, it's really tight. Sure. It's really close. And really the reason I say keep Jake there is because I think he's developed some good chemistry with Sprague and with Kripp. We've seen some big runs off that right side. And, the combo blocks that we talked about against Nebraska, that was with Jake at right guard. And not that, Brady or Afobe couldn't do it as well. But I don't necessarily want to make any more changes than I have to at this point.
Totally makes sense. All right, number 4 on our 7 from 77. Jon, we'll get your keys to the game on Thursday, but just give fans an overview on this 4-1 Trojans team. What stands out to you about USC?
A lot of new faces from what we saw last year. Jaden Maeva, their quarterback, he's a transfer, but he's been there 2 years. He's operating this offense, and it's more of a passing attack and downfield attack with Lemon, their number one receiver. We heard Coach talk about him on Monday night, but he's a guy that, and he outpaces all the other receivers by a ton. I think it's like 33 receptions, and the next guy is like 12 or 13. So he's a guy that you're going to have to identify no matter where he lines up and account for him. So he's their big downhill threat or downfield threat. Jordan, he's kind of a funny story because he was a community college guy that came over and is now playing for him, and he's been effective. They've got a couple of guys. He's the one that's, I don't want to necessarily say bell cow, but he's carried 2/3 of the load for USC. Offensively, they're still the USC that you close your eyes and you think about. They're a passing team. I don't know that they really want to be that physical, but they can be dynamic down the field. Defensively, it's kind of the same thing. They want to be able to get after the quarterback. Both of their edge guys get 3.5 and 2.5 sacks, and they've got a linebacker in Eric Gentry that I think is a really good football player. He's their leading tackler, but they're a team that when things get physical, I don't know that they really want to be a violent physical team. I know they may talk about it, but we saw it last year in their first time trip through the Big Ten. We're seeing it again now. I just don't know that they're ready to be as physical as a lot of Big Tens want to be, certainly Michigan.
Yeah, remember what we talked about with Michael Cohen of Fox Sports on last week's live stream, the bonus portion that's only on video, a national perspective of somebody saying, I can't look away from that Michigan defense without thinking, wow, this team is physical. They punch you in the mouth. Even in USC's best years, they didn't have that type of Lendale White was a bruiser. He was a really fun running back to watch, but it was more the Reggie Bush type of players. That's phenomenal football, no doubt, but it's
a lot
not,
of finesse.
For sure. It's very different than what Michigan has brought to the table, and in a lot of ways, Michigan has zigged when others have zagged with that physicality.
Yeah, and when you think about like a guy like Jaden Sanders, I'm really excited to see him play, and Shug, the two guys that are most likely going to be your starting corners, play against Lemon, their wide receiver. And, how did they match up? What type of defense is Wink going to have? Because they are, even though we want to say, hey, tough physical, that's always going to win. You win the line of scrimmage. That, has been kind of tried and true for Michigan. But you're also going to have to match up with different styles of offense. How are they going to match up with a team that throws the ball a lot downfield and a quarterback that has, in large part, made really good decisions? He doesn't put the ball at risk a lot. And when you do have that opportunity, you got to be able to take the ball away. But I am curious to some of the wrinkles that we may see from Wink.
Feels like the strength for Michigan still is defense, even though there's a lot to work with offensively, and the strength for USC is offense. I think that's going to be the battle. Excited for your keys coming up on Thursday. So number 5 on our 7 from 77, Jon. We delved into the full month of October a little bit last week on the show. It opens up for Michigan. And this is the game that was circled for a lot of people once Michigan took care of business in Lincoln. So, Jon, is this the second biggest game the rest of the regular season? And is this the second toughest game the rest of the regular season?
I do believe both are correct, yes. And so you still have the rivalry game with Michigan State. Defensively, they seem to be very challenged. In protecting their quarterback, they seem to be very challenged. When you think about Maryland. Now, Maryland is kind of that sneaky team. They're a little better than I expected them to be, and they've got a very young, talented quarterback. So that one's not to be dismissed. Really, none of them are. But then you got Purdue, you got Northwestern. Washington, to me, is kind of a unique team where you saw them compete early with Ohio State, but it wasn't necessarily offensively. Defensively, I think they're a better defensive team, and it's really because of their speed. And again, I don't know that they're necessarily this big physical team, but there's a lot of speed involved in that Washington defense. But as a total team, as well as traveling across the country, USC is certainly going to be, if you win this game, right now nobody's talking about Michigan as a playoff team, unless you're here, and I've talked about it, I know you've talked about it. Locally, we talk about the potential for them to be a playoff team, but you you have to be able to show that you can beat teams of different styles.
Yep.
You have to be able to show you can win on the road, consistently on the road. They did it in Lincoln, but traveling to USC is a completely different animal.
Yeah, no doubt. And the reality is, if Michigan wins out till the game, they still might be in with a loss. We don't want to talk about that aspect, but it would require a win here, a good showing, and then probably the USCs, the Nebraskas of the world finishing strong so that those wins have some oomph to them. Before we continue on our 7 from 77, our friends at Foguth Financial Group bringing back a popular event coming up next month.
That's right, Brian. The first one was so popular, Foguth's 4th annual night out at the Big House. Well, it's come and gone. It sold out last month, but due to increased demand, another date is scheduled for Thursday, November the 6th. You can learn strategies for managing the risks of retirement and enjoy complimentary dinner and drinks, door prizes, and exclusive access to tour Michigan Stadium. All you have to do is go to MGoBlue.com/bighouse to sign up. That's MGoBlue.com/bighouse. Just like the first one, limited seats are available, and it's going to fill up fast.
All right, number 6 on our 7 from 77. This segment is brought to you unofficially by the Pom Pom outlet store.
Sold out to James Franklin. Didn't have enough juice in the tank.
UCLA 42, Penn State 37. First 0-4 or worse team to beat a top 10 team in 40 years. Who can forget the Miners of UTEP improving to 1-6? 1985, a win over also lucky number 7, BYU. John, I don't have a question. Just take it away.
As soon as I got in my truck, the first thing I do is try and find some of the games, catch a little bit of catch up on the score, and may or may not watch some of the games on the iPad on the way home because you're stuck in traffic. You're not really going anywhere. The first thing I saw, and it was hard for me to believe, was UCLA. I think it was 24.
They're rolling
to
early.
7 over Penn State. So instantly, I break out the phone and I start texting Doug Harsh, Jason Avant, everyone, and I'm like, "Hey, are you guys seeing this?" And I'm stunned, absolutely stunned. I thought this was a Penn State team. Yeah, it's hard to overcome a tough loss at home, and it's hard to win on the road, especially when you're going across time zones. We've talked about that, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that UCLA is going into it with an interim head coach and an offensive coordinator, and we didn't find this out until after, but it's the offensive coordinator, it was a Jerry Neuheisel.
Yep.
And he looks like he's about 16 years old.
Yeah.
Calling plays for the very first time, and in fact, he is trying to figure out just how to use the headset on the sideline. And he said there was a lot of times where he's talking because he's been a position coach, but he doesn't have the microphone in front of his face. So he's got to pull the microphone down, and then he's not sure which button to hit. And this is a team that puts it on Penn State. I could not have been more excited and laughed harder for, 3 hours after our game to watch Penn State struggle with, and I feel bad for the players because there's a lot of really good players on that Penn State team.
Sure.
But everyone knows how I feel about James Franklin, and it was comical to see that happen out at the Rose Bowl. And I don't know, has James Franklin ever played in the Rose Bowl? No. Well, they made a playoff
16.
game there. Yeah. Well, they played USC out there, didn't they? Or they played Oklahoma.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm just going to shout out teams until I get one.
Yeah, sure. Maybe it was 0-6 UTEP.
Alabama, Tennessee.
So I don't know where you go from here. I actually joked with a few people that night. What if James Franklin just took over? We talked about this yesterday. What if James Franklin just took over at UCLA? Because it's very clear James Franklin has now proven, because the model for Michigan 2 years ago was to bring back a ton of talent and go and win a national championship. Same thing at Ohio State last year. They brought back a ton of guys who could have gone to the NFL and been drafted and been playing on Sundays, and they won a national championship. It felt like Penn State was following that model. Third time was very much not the charm. James Franklin's the guy you bring in to be the coach before the coach. I think he can resuscitate a program. I think UCLA, I think Virginia Tech. There are others out there that are options. But if you can't make the playoff with this roster, and they now have to go to Ohio State, where I think he's won one time in his entire career. if they don't go to Ohio State and win the rest of the games, they aren't making the playoff.
Well, I mean, let's not forget. I mean, he's taken Penn State from where he inherited it to where it is now, and that is a good team.
That was still very early in the post-Paterno.
Yeah, but it was Bill O'Brien,
yeah,
that really brought them out of the post-Paterno and saved those couple of years before he went to Houston, and became the head coach there in the NFL. So I think Bill O'Brien gets glossed over a little bit, and not fairly, because I think he did a tremendous job. He was the one that was in place right away, and he stabilized that program. Then James Franklin came in, and yeah, he's recruited well, but it's always been that top 5 matchup, that top 10 matchup that he can't seem to win. The issue is, first of all, I think he'll be competing with Spartan fans that want to send Jonathan Smith out to UCLA. We've heard all of those different, conversations. The problem is in today's era of college football and the finances, the business side of things, his buyout is $50 million. That's 2 years worth of, over 2 years worth of revenue share that is coming out of the athletic budget. And so I just don't know, is there a donor at Penn State that wants to say, okay, well, here's $50 million? Maybe there is, I don't know. Or maybe there's a handful of donors. That is a really tough one to deal with. So I don't think James Franklin, as much as Penn State fans, and we were out there just after he signed his new extension. I think it was a 10-year deal. And there were not a lot of people at that time that were excited about the extension they gave James Franklin. Now they're even less excited about it. But because of the finances and the business of college football right now, I don't know that he's going anywhere. And they're going to have to live with him for a little bit of time.
It is a story we will certainly monitor. We'll see if Penn State can get to a point where that game in Columbus is to try to keep their season alive. But we certainly didn't see this one coming. Otherwise, Ohio State takes care of business over Minnesota. Nebraska holds off Michigan State. A little closer, I think, than you expected, but it did kind of fall out for Michigan State down the stretch. Illinois wins at Purdue as expected. And you mentioned both Washington and Maryland. It looked like Maryland was going to set themselves up for a 5-0 start and a lot of conversation, maybe a national ranking if things played out a certain way. And then they blew a 20-0 home lead to Washington. Heck of a comeback by the Huskies. What else stood out in the Big Ten?
Oh, well, I mean, that's the thing that I keep talking about with Washington is even though they had that big lead, they got this defense that's fast and furious, and they made a couple of stops, they made a couple of plays, gave their offense the ball back as many times as possible. And so that's why I'm a little bit concerned about that game next week against Washington. But in the Big Ten, it's really, I'm trying to figure out Ohio State. Like, they've had a bunch of quizzes, but I don't know that they've really been tested. And I know, I'll say that first game against Texas, we've learned a lot more about both programs since then. That's a big test because it is a big-time matchup against a big-time program. Now, Texas doesn't look to be as formidable as we thought maybe they would be going into the season. But other than that, I don't really know. Julian Sayin has done well. The defense has played well, and they've only allowed like 6-7 points per game. And I know everybody's talking about Matt Patricia as their new DC. They really haven't been tested. Yeah. And so as we get further through the season, when they start playing some better teams, we'll learn more. And I think this week, I know we're going to talk about this next, but this is, before the season started and before we learned a little bit more about Illinois, I thought that this was the potential of an upset. And Illinois, going into the season, they were ranked, right outside the top 10, 11, 12. They have been disappointing on the offensive line to this point, being able to protect Drew Altmaier. But that matchup in Champaign, I think we'll learn a lot more about both these teams. And don't underestimate Brett Bielema and his ability to coach up his team and get ready for a big game.
Ohio State's a 14.5-point favorite right now. I think that's probably a little high, but we shall see. That game is at noon, then 3:30, Indiana at Oregon. Top 10 matchup, undefeated teams. You always want to make sure you have 2 weeks to get ready for Indiana, Oregon, as we all knew we would need when the Big Ten expanded. But truly, I'm fired up to watch this game as we're getting ready for Michigan-USC.
I am too. And honestly, I want to know, is Indiana ready to put the big boy pants on and compete across country in Eugene with Oregon? And I don't know if they can or they can't. What the evidence tells me is that they will be able to play with them. The issue is Dan Lanning, the amount of talent, the amount of speed that they have, and you know, I don't know. It's this one is perplexing because the non-conference schedule for Indiana was nothing to write home about. But the way that they dismantled Illinois, the way that they have played to this point leads you to believe that they are one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the Big Ten. And this is going to be an opportunity. This is maybe the opportunity for that program to plant their flag and say, yeah, we've arrived.
It would be, wow, it'll be a fun atmosphere out there for that one. All right, let's conclude our 7 from 77 with a look at the rest of the national storylines. Miami staked its claim unquestionably at this point as the ACC's best team. A little bit of a late rally by Florida State, but the Canes win. They've proclaimed themselves as state champions. They've beaten pretty much everybody of relevance in the state. Yeah, that's true. Very good point. They'll have to do that a little bit here down the stretch. My question is, are they right now the nation's best?
I still think Oregon is the best team in the country. Miami probably coming in at second, and there's a Big 12 team that...
A Big 12 team? Did you misspeak?
I don't know. Well, it's the team that's probably paid the most for their roster in Texas Tech.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, we're not going to have any idea what Texas Tech will be or BYU will be until they play somebody. And I just don't know what to make of the Big 12 or either of those teams because I don't think a lot of the teams that they've played. Now, they've taken care of business, which is all you can do. You can play the teams that you're scheduled to play. Texas Tech is one of those teams where I'm itching to see them play against better opponents.
Their win at Utah was super impressive. They went there and dominated. That's a big-time atmosphere, so I'd certainly tip my cap there. I think Texas is probably thankful that the Penn State thing happened because it kind of allowed the Longhorns' loss at Florida a little bit more defensible to slip under the radar. But Arch Manning, 16 of 29, 263 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I mean, there were a lot of people who thought he'd be the number 1 overall pick, and the Saints, you know, the Manning family combination, maybe the Saints would be the worst team in football and they could draft them. There's an argument for who's the most disappointing team in college football through early October with Texas and Penn State.
Yeah, and I would have to say at this point, it's probably Texas, just because of and preseason hype is you take it for what it is. It's a lot of unknowns and a lot of people projecting, but I'm going to flip that. It's Penn State because they had more talent that was a known commodity coming back and playing. And so when you go and you lose to a team like UCLA after having lost the game like they did a couple of weeks ago, I think they're the biggest disappointment.
In a game where they could have absolutely won against Oregon the week before, which would have made the UCLA loss even that more perplexing. Otherwise, pom-poms. Alabama finding its stride, the Tide surging past previously unranked Vandy 30-14. So this week, Alabama goes to 5-0 Missouri. How about this? This will be the Tigers' 6th consecutive home game. Now, their Power 4 wins are by 11 over Kansas and by 9 over South Carolina. It's a prove-it time for Eli Drinkwitz and the Tigers this week. Also unbeaten Oklahoma. Seems like John Mateer will be out again. They could end Texas' season at the Cotton Bowl. What are your thoughts on those two matchups?
The Red River rivalry is going to be a lot of fun. It always is. There's always a lot of fireworks. There's always a lot of drama in that game. And I mean, who knows? That's why when we talk about, the big games that are left for Michigan, I'm never going to say Michigan State isn't one of those games. So, that'll be fun. And, can Oklahoma continue to win and wait for John Mateer to be able to be healthy enough to come back and play? If they can, Oklahoma is going to be one of those teams that's going to be talked about because of being able to have a backup quarterback come in, perform, and hold things at status quo, winning games until their starter comes back. But Alabama is interesting because obviously that first loss to Florida State, it was stunning. Mm-hmm. Since then, I don't know that there's a team that's playing better football than Alabama. And I mentioned this on the morning show this morning where, we've had guests on and say, week one in the NFL can be a liar. And that's kind of what we're hanging our hat on for the Lions, that game against Green Bay wasn't really who the Lions are. And they've proved that that's not who they are. Kind of the same thing for Alabama. Week one, was that just a liar? And now all of a sudden, you're looking at what this true Alabama team is.
It'll be interesting to watch, and I don't think we know what the true Missouri Tigers team is either. They will eventually have to, travel. But congrats to them, 6 or 8.
Yeah, but I mean, come on. Like, we could say, Miami hasn't left the state, and neither has, Missouri. We've had a whole lot of seasons where we haven't left until mid-October either. So
100%. No, it's hey,
if
it
you
all
can do it,
comes
do
back.
it.
It all comes back around. All right, transition time. Audio side, Jon catches up with running back Jordan Marshall. Video side, we will chat with Jack Miller here momentarily. Want to catch up on some comments first. Residual dynamic, Rod Moore feeling good and back, coach on the field, Zeke being back, Jair Hill being solid, USC wanting to throw the ball deep into this solidifying Michigan secondary seems to be playing with fire. They're going to throw. They're probably going to get their yards. But, I like where Michigan's secondary is right now, and I like where the defense as a whole is right now.
Yeah, I do too. And so, some of it is going to be on Jaden Sanders. It's going to be some of those young players in the backfield. And you're going to see a lot of 5, maybe even 6 defensive backs. But I also like the fact that, one, some of those guys are playing really well. They also have to be able to have enough time to throw the ball downfield. And with, Jayshon Barham coming off the edge, or it's Derek Moore, or it's Rayshon Benny up the middle. Trey Pierce has played extremely well. I'm really excited to see how this defensive front matches up with that offensive line. And is the USC offense going to do what we saw Wisconsin do early on? And that is, hey, I want to get the ball in and out of the quarterback's hands quickly, get it to the playmakers, make them make a guy miss, because we saw some missed tackles early in the game in that Wisconsin matchup. Or are they going to take their shots downfield simply because that's who they are? I don't know, because you're going to have plenty of time, and I don't know that they're going to have as much time as they have had to this point because of the pass rush Michigan has.
David, longtime viewer, he was not that shocked about the Penn State UCLA. Tip your cap. Maybe you profited a little bit off that if you did. Heady play. A couple cool posts here. Joel saying he'll attend his first Michigan-USC game since the 1970 Rose Bowl. And how about Dakota Kid coming to LA to see my team in person for the first time this year from Eugene? Stoked. And that's a great way to transition into somebody who will attend his second Michigan game since September 14th. That is Jack Miller.
We just won't let it go, will we, Jack?
I don't know what it's going to take, fellas. I really don't. But it's good to see you both.
Yeah, I don't believe you. But what it's going to take is an entire season where you don't take a vacation in the middle of it. So you have to wait till next year.
Unfortunately, Jack, it really did resonate because it was the one weekend and then the bye. Like that really, because Jon despises byes.
Yeah. But I mean, in your defense, terrific planning. I mean, you were able to stretch that bye week into 2 weeks, and I hope you and your fiance enjoyed the vacation, the time off.
This was not on the topics that Brian listed we would discuss today. I've been bamboozled to appear here today.
Yes, you have. Also, what has not been on the topic was, for sure, bamboozled was good. Yeah. Remember inertia?
Spell it. Bam.
I catch a 9er in there. So, Jack, you're wearing a Detroit Tigers polo. How are you feeling about the Tigers here at Comerica the next couple of days?
We'll see. It was awesome. They got that first win, and then would have been awesome to see the second one. They've dropped short. So I feel good about today. I think it's we'll see if they actually get underway at 4 p.m. A little rain out there. But I bet you downtown Detroit's buzzing today and will be a lot of fun for the fans that get down there. So I'm excited to see them play. I mean, it's a little bit of they just keep finding a way. It hasn't been pretty, but they just keep delivering, and hopefully they got a couple more in them and can get to the next series.
So if you were going to the game today, they are asking fans. It's an orange out. Do you own an orange shirt?
No, I am going to the game, and this is about as good as I got right now. So I'm gonna try to maybe find an orange towel or something like that, maybe a hat. But I don't have anything orange. No. That's a great question, Jon, because I was thinking the same thing myself today.
Love it. That's great. I want to ask you to start, Jack, something I asked Jon. Giovanni El Hadi and Brady Norton were both listed as questionable before the Wisconsin game. If both are back and they are able to play, how would you align the starting offensive line group?
Well, I think we've heard the coaches talk about Gio's earned that right. He's a captain. He's earned his spot back when he's ready to play and he's full tilt. I think it's really that right guard that's up for debate. Right, Garnero has played pretty well over the last couple of weeks. It hasn't been great, but you didn't see probably enough of Norton in the first few weeks to think that was a solid starter that could be contended with. It's hard to know what goes on behind closed doors and what they're seeing in practice and the true health of these guys. But I would tell you that if Gio is at a point that he can play, I think he's earned that. He should be out there and get his shot. And then there's nothing to say that they can't rotate guys. We've seen a lot of that over the last couple of years. And my opinion would be that they would find a way to do that no matter what the health status is if multiple guys are available at those positions.
Yeah, and my take on it was as well, I think Jake has done a nice job. I like the rhythm that they have going from center over all the way over to the right side. But I wouldn't be opposed to Afobe getting a few reps in there, maybe a series or two, just in case Gio has to come out at some point, and then you don't have a guy that's been standing on the sidelines. If it's in the third quarter, hey, at least Afobe has been in there. He's got the blood flowing, and he's a little bit in the flow of the game, is more familiar with it, and now all of a sudden he goes back over to left, and you just hopefully keep the train on the tracks.
Yeah, for sure. You want to keep as many guys ready to go as you can. You never know from an injury standpoint what's going to happen. It was interesting to me looking back at some of the film. I thought Sprague had played really well up to the Wisconsin game. He struggled last week, and I don't know if that was you had mentioned chemistry, John, so it just clicked in my mind. Was that something where they weren't on the same page? Was that more just one-on-one, bad fundamentals, getting beat? That is the downfall to the rotation, right? Is that sometimes you lose that chemistry with the guy next to you. But they practice for that, right? There's been a lot of rotations in there starting in training camp. We talked about all the position battles that were going on. So you like to think that no matter who is in there working at whatever position, the guy playing next to him is used to it and is comfortable as well.
What we saw from Donovan McCulley, Andrew Marsh, even Samaj Morgan, the fact that you had three guys, and I think we've identified at least a number one receiver, what does that do for the offense, especially going out to USC playing against a team that is a much more prolific passing team than they are a running team?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. I think there's still work to be done at that wide receiver room, but it was nice to see McCulley and now Marsh really take that next step and be true playmakers that everybody, Bryce most importantly, can feel confident getting the ball to. I talked at the post-game show a little bit about this last week. This Michigan team feels a lot different, and wide receiver is emblematic of this. It feels a little bit different this year where we have the talent to make up for big mistakes. And in years past, if we were loading the box and running 3-4 yards, and you had to get that, because if you got behind the sticks, besides Colson Loveland, it was you never felt that good about being able to just play that perfect style of football, maybe besides the national championship year. And there were even some debates about that going in late into the season. So my point is, with McCulley and Marsh now, you got guys out there that, hey, it could be a TFL on first down at 2nd and 14, and all of a sudden Bryce is just talented enough to put the ball in the right spot, and McCulley's got the athleticism to go up and grab it and continue the drive, right? Those are things that we didn't have a lot of before, where you felt like, hey, just throw the ball up to your playmaker and let him go do that. We're seeing Marsh come into his own and be not necessarily that deep threat, but an intermediate route guy who, like an Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions, right? Hey, you need 6. He's at 6 yards, false forward, gets you the first down. You just feel confident getting the ball into him quickly. As those guys continue to develop and as Bryce continues to build chemistry with them, it's going to make all the difference in the world. It's been a little bit of the question mark. It was good to see that progress. I think there's a lot of room to grow, and the ceiling's really high, which is always a good thing at the halfway point in the season.
Yeah, we'll see how Michigan receiving core handles this consistency aspect. Channing Goodwin's shown some flashes, no doubt, but he only has 2 catches against Power 4 opponents right now. If that Andrew Marsh 4 for 80 can be a sustainable thing, whether it's him or anybody else, I think we've seen Donovan McCulley be consistent enough to where we know he's going to get a few catches a game. Not quite that Amon-Ra style yet. This was the first kind of game that felt like that type of a box score. But if you can get somebody like an Andrew Marsh, a Samaj Morgan, a Channing Goodwin, who can give you that 3, 4, 5 catches as an ancillary, a supporting actor role, that to me feels like it might be just as impactful as a Donovan McCulley 100-yard game.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the thing about it as well is now that Marlon Klein is healthy, hopefully they get Hogan Hansen back, soon. We've seen Zach Marshall. Like, you throw that into the mix as well with those receivers, with this running game, and the audio that we had on the Monday night Inside Michigan Football show between Jason and Donovan McCulley, one of the things that Donovan said was he's been telling Bryce, hey, sometimes you just get it in the area, let me go make a play. We saw it against Oklahoma. We certainly saw it against Wisconsin. Like, as soon as that happens, now you develop a little bit more confidence that, hey, I'm going to put this ball up, and I'm going to put it in a position where it may be an acrobatic catch, but my guy's the only guy that can come down with it. And I know if I just get it in the area, at least Donovan's going to be able to make a play on it.
Yeah, now to your point, John, we saw Marlon Klein week 1. We haven't really seen that tight end room since play a factor. So now you got 2 receivers you feel really good about. Marlon Klein, Hogan Hansen getting healthy, all these weapons. And we haven't even thrown the ball out of the backfield yet either. I got to assume if Justin Haynes has some hands, he's going to make people miss in space, right? There's all these weapons running around where, you look at a game like Wisconsin, where I think that everyone's felt there was still a little meat on that bone, and yet still go through the box score and the stats, it's pretty darn impressive. So again, that's a good sign that there's all this room to grow still as the season progresses.
It's a great point. Justice Haynes on the year receiving 9 catches, 29 yards. Not saying he's going to turn into, a constant threat there, but it does feel like an area to develop. Great question here from Residual Dynamic. With Bryce being so young and the wide receivers figuring things out, O-line will be the ceiling of the team. What have you guys seen to know if they are what they are or can grow into a playoff squad 2021 vibes? Jack, what do you think the range of outcomes, the upside is for that group?
Well, I think there's certainly still a lot of upside there. I mean, I think, Sprague did not play great. I didn't think against Wisconsin, but he's been pretty solid all season long. I thought Crippen's done a good job on the inside. Evan Link, maybe a better run blocker than a pass protector, but a young guy. And then we've seen what's happened at guard with the injuries and shuffling guys in and out of there. Like anything else, it takes time. I would anticipate that group to continue to get better as the season goes on. A lot of times you don't have the luxury like you do in the NFL of preseason games and getting that live action speed. And when you have young guys or newer guys playing positions next to each other, sometimes it just takes a few weeks to start clicking. That Wisconsin front seven was really good, and they were good on paper and they were good in person. That was a really good test for this team. We're probably not going to see a front seven like that maybe the rest of the year, or certainly not until the Ohio State game. So there is room for improvement. There's no doubt about that. And really, there's room for more consistency because it's there at times, and then it's not, right? There's just the gap on being up to the task and falling really short of the task is just too big. But I like the idea that as time goes on, those guys will continue to find one another, and the offense as well will start to form more of an identity. We're getting there, but there's still a lot of different stuff going on. There's still a lot of formations, a lot of different weapons. I still think they're all trying to piece that together. So I'm optimistic that the ceiling is higher than it is now, and that they'll continue to trend the right way.
I think it's an interesting comparison, 21 to this one. Remember, that was Andrew Vastardis, the wait your turn center, like a Greg Crippen. Certainly, Zach Zinter and Trevor Keegan weren't the names that they became. And then the tackles, Andrew Stuber, Ryan Hayes, those guys were, that was before Carson Barnhart. That was before Trente Jones. Yeah. It's an interesting comp.
It is, but here's where I'm going to put it a little bit more on Chip Lindsey. I think we'll learn a lot in this USC game because we may not face a front like we saw against Wisconsin in terms of being able to stop the run with some of the run blitzes and how big they were. But with Crawford on one side and Shelby on the other, you got a guy with 2.5 and 3.5 sacks respectively. I think this may be the best combo of pass rushers that we've seen on the edge. So when I say put it on Chip Lindsey, it's, hey, maybe Max Bredesen or one of the running backs, they're going to release through one of those defensive ends. Or it's you're going to put a tight end there, they're going to release through them, slow them down, stop their feet, and then the offensive tackle can be in position to make a better or more effective pass block. So Some of it is, they're going to have to be able to win one-on-one matchups. And if you're down and you're trying to fight back, you're going to have one-on-ones. But if early in the game, I would look to have some of those security blankets in place for both of the tackles.
Yeah, and I think you're not going to be able to get away with what they tried to do at Oklahoma, which was, and I get the idea behind it, an explosive offense on the road. Why don't we take the air out of the ball, slow the game down, try to control the line of scrimmage, and just make it a really boring, methodical game that hopefully we can dominate up front. We weren't able to do that against Oklahoma. Going into USC, I think they're going to want to make it a shootout, right? They want Jade Mayava out there throwing the ball around. And so if that means that Bryce Underwood is throwing the ball around and them and scoring, I think they'd rather have it that way because they're getting the ball back, and they just are probably, USC that is, and Lincoln Riley are probably just confident we'll outscore them if we end up in that type of battle. It'll be interesting to see with what Chip Lindsey and this offense wants to do, learning the mistakes of that Oklahoma game of probably not opening it up enough, being too conservative, and not executing at that conservative game plan, how that puts you so far behind. But, do you run the risk of, throwing the ball around and the risk reward that comes with that, and giving that ball back to that really good USC offense? Because that's the truth. We probably wouldn't win a shootout, but you also don't want to play it too conservatively where you don't give yourself a good chance. And, that's going to be the real test, is to see how this offense and what that game plan is going into the weekend.
Joel commenting, I would like to see Michigan start the game utilizing a hurry-up offense while rotating the O-line each series. The skilled players should be Bryce, Justice, Klein, McCulley, Marsh, and Bredesen. I will say this. I do think that if you're going to have an offensive breakout, there's a real opportunity here for Michigan because, as Alejandro says, I'm struggling to judge USC's defense. They are good at sacks, but have they played any O-lines comparable to or better than Michigan's? This feels like, Jack, a ripe opportunity for Michigan's offense to put up a number on the road because USC, to Alejandro's point, hasn't played a whole lot this year in terms of, elite offenses, yet they're nowhere close to the top of, scoring defense numbers, yardage defense numbers, all that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I thought that, I know that from a talent perspective, they can go get it done. There's no doubt in my mind about that. It's about putting these guys in the right position to go do that and really not overthinking it. And there's an element of, look, you got a guy like Bryce Underwood back there, Justice Haynes, McCulley, you got all these weapons. Go use them and live by that and die by that versus trying to, overthink it and out scheme it. They can. I don't know if we will. I hope so. But, we went into Oklahoma maybe a little too timid to just let it loose. I would have a hard time thinking that we make that same mistake again. And if we do let those guys go play, I would agree. I think our offensive line feasts on defense like this. These West Coast Big Ten schools still don't have the same demeanor and style of ball that the old Big Ten schools do, which lends itself to the idea that you can control the line of scrimmage. They're going to have to sell it to stop that, and you can let those athletes on the edge go make plays.
Yeah, so I want to go back to what Joel had sent in as the message in regards to, going with some up-tempo, some no-huddle. And, I mean, so no-huddle doesn't really mean anything anymore because nobody really huddles up. But in terms of going with tempo, one of the things that can be an advantage with a young quarterback is as soon as that play clock hits, they started at 40. You get 25 seconds with Chip Lindsey being able to talk to him. Yep. And it doesn't matter where they are. They break the huddle, it's that mic is still on. It doesn't cut off until 15 seconds. So if they can get to the line of scrimmage, have everybody lined up, and have a play called, then all of a sudden, hey, Chip Lindsey is having a conversation with Bryce about what he sees. This is a huge advantage for a young quarterback that may not be able to see the entirety of the field or see things that are going on. Certainly not going to be able to see things that Chip Lindsey up in the booth sees. So he can be talking to Bryce as long as that microphone is still on. 15 seconds hit, now you're done. So if you do get up, you get set, and you're playing with a higher tempo, then at least you have that input of what Chip is seeing along with what Bryce is seeing, and you got a better chance of being in a good play, or at least Bryce being able to see what's going on, and you snap that ball a little quicker.
Yeah, it just simplifies the game too, right? There's only so many options when you're going that quick that you can utilize. And having coach in your ear telling you, hey, this is probably what the look is and this is where to go with it. just makes it really simple, and he can go out and execute without the thinking part of it. It's a great point, John.
Travel-wise, team will leave Thursday. That's an adjustment from last year at Washington. What's important on a trip where, I mean, the team's going to arrive and probably get to the hotel somewhere in the ballpark of 45 hours before kickoff, which is obviously much different than what it was last year?
I mean, I like the idea of going out there a day early. I mean, I think jet lag is a real thing, and people probably, yes, these are young kids, but we're almost at the halfway point of the season here. People are beat up, people are tired. Just the slightest thing that's off from a nutrition or, most importantly, a sleep standpoint can really affect how you feel and how you go perform on Saturday. So I'm a fan of them getting out there a day early, getting acclimated to the time change, and just getting comfortable with that. They'll have a day to go get a walkthrough in at the Chargers facility, which will be, I think, fun for them and energetic, right? Get to see an NFL practice, facility and be a part of that, and then kind of lock in from there. So I think you get the best of both worlds, right? Hey, we're going out a day early. Also means the guys won't have to go to class on Friday, so they'll be excited about that, I'm sure. And then, hey, we're going to lock in. We got this walkthrough, and then back after that, back to the hotel. Then you're just in your routine. Then it's the night before a game, and the day of the game is the day of the game, right? So I like the idea. I'm a fan of it. I think it will make a difference. And again, only the slightest thing can throw a guy off where he's just a little lethargic, or his legs feel a little heavy after a long flight like that. So I do think it's a good idea. And, we didn't do it last year at Washington. Doing it this year, we'll see how it pays off.
Yeah, wise words from a guy that travels as much as he does.
He is a traveler, and that's not just because of a few weeks back. Come on now. Any final thoughts for Jack Miller there, John?
In terms of the adjustments that Wink made on defense, this year through 5 games, they've only given up 3 touchdowns in the second half. I think only 1 touchdown in the fourth quarter, 3 field goals in the second half. They're in the top 10 of being a productive defense in the second half. What is it that Wink is doing, and how is he doing it so that the defense is as productive as they are late in games?
Yeah, I think he's just, Wink's a smart defensive mind. He's got really good guys on his staff. I think it's kind of, we're seeing a trend here of particularly that first drive from another team. They're catching us off guard. Give them credit. Those coaches and players are good too. And they have good schemes coming in that we didn't probably anticipate, breaking tendencies, things that weren't on film. And then after a few series, and then certainly the halftime break, it seems like Wink and that staff have it figured out, right? So whatever each team has thrown at them, they've been able to go in the locker room and adjust and get on the same page to go do that. I do think there's an element, we really haven't seen it a whole lot this year, but I'm getting the sense that it's true of, Michigan, the physical nature with which they play, the conditioning that they have. You remember our success over the last, 4 or 5 years. A lot of that was just wearing teams down as they went on. And you can see that. I mean, the opposing quarterbacks by the end of each game have been limping off the field. There's been a lot of contact. It's been a physical ball game. And our guys seemingly are getting stronger as the game goes on, in tandem with Wink and those defensive coaches figuring out this is what they want to do. This is how we're going to take it away from them. So I think it's a credit to not only the defensive coaches, but that strength staff too. Those guys are playing tough and strong and physical football the entire 60 minutes out there.
All right, Jack, enjoy the ball game today. Go get a win, and we will see you out in Los Angeles, my friend. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, guys. See you out there. Go Blue.
There is Jack Miller here on the show. Before we get out of here, I wanted to highlight this from David. Michigan won for the first time on October 4th since John was playing, 1997. It was my birthday, October 4th, 1997. John, do you remember who you and the Wolverines beat in that national championship season of 1997?
October 4.
Yep.
I'm going to guess Purdue? Northwestern?
Nope. Northwestern was the next week.
Okay.
Purdue.
It might have been Iowa?
Nope.
Iowa was later in the season.
Yep. Yeah, the Iowa was the comeback game.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I don't know. I saw
Kurt
that comment
Signetti
as well.
wasn't walking through the door on that afternoon.
Yeah, the Hoosiers.
37-0 at an 11:20 a.m. local time kickoff. Oh, that's the dream. Other than
That is the dream.
it not being at home.
I forget how great that season was.
Yeah, I mean,
11.
we were talking about how. I mean, we were talking about how the start times were. I'm just going to rattle these off for you. Noon. Week 1.
Yes.
Colorado.
Yeah.
Week 2. You remember? No.
No, I don't.
Okay. All right.
Come on.
Baylor 12:30.
Okay.
You really had to push through 3:30 for Notre Dame week 3. 11:20 a.m. Central Time week 4. 12:30, 12:30, 12:30, 12:20, 3:30, 3:30, 2:30 Central at Wisconsin, and then noon. And then the latest game that tipped Eastern Time was the Rose Bowl at 5 o'clock. Eastern, 2 o'clock local.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
College football is supposed to be played at noon. It gets even better if it's played sometime in the 11 o'clock hour, and we can manage a 3 o'clock start.
Yeah. If John ever becomes the commissioner of all of college football, there will be one heck of a 3.5-hour stretch, and then no college football on any other time. It'll be tough to follow.
Go to my fourth liquid.
Water. All right. For John Jansen, for Jack Miller, I'm Brian Bush. Can't wait to get out to Los Angeles for a big one. Wolverines and Trojans. We'll be right back here next week for another live stream. Thanks to all the comments. Thanks for all the viewership. We'll talk to you next week. Go Blue.